There it is. Okay, so with that being said, I think last time we did name and organization, and this time if we could pop around and just do name, organization, and real quick, what city and state are you in? Just to kind of give folks a sense of where we all are. So I'm Jonathan, I am in Oakland, California, and I will pass it over to Sarah Ross.
Hi, I'm Sarah Ross, and I'm in Amherst, Massachusetts. I'll pass it over to Phoebe.
Hi everyone, Phoebe Byerly with the Center for Green Schools, and I am on the other side of the state and outside of Boston, Massachusetts.
Ted?
Ted Tiffany, Building Decarbonization Coalition. I'm in Santa Rosa, California.
Great. Harley?
And I will.
Hey everyone, Harley Stokes with Blue Green Alliance. I'm based in Baltimore, Maryland.
Anthony?
Hi everybody, my name is Anthony de Guzman with GreenLink Education, and I'm in Philly, Philadelphia.
Right on. Jenny?
Jenny Seidel, Green Schools National Network, and I'm in Iowa City, Iowa.
Awesome. Karen?
Hi everyone, Karen Goldmark with GreenLink Education in New York, New York.
Great. Craig?
Craig Schiller in Washington, the non-state of District of Columbia.
Great. Brian?
Yeah.
Brian Fox, Green Schools National Network, 15-minute walk from Craig.
Ash?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ash Hoth. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm calling in from occupied Ohlone territory, also known as Oakland, California.
Right on. Serena?
Hi, everyone. I'm Serena with Rewiring America, and I am calling from Mesa, Arizona.
Right on. Christy?
Hi there, I'm Christy Kimball. I'm a consultant to a few of the orgs on the call and calling in today from Bend, Oregon.
Great. Kelly?
Hi there, everybody. Kelly Tapia, Samskara Studio, and I'm today calling from Netterling, Colorado. Next call, I'll be in New York, New York.
Right on. Catherine?
Hi, I'm Catherine Roboff. I'm with WRI on the Electric School Bus Initiative, and I am calling in from DC, about a 10-minute walk from Bryan.
Great. Emma?
Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Hines. I'm with RMI, and I'm in Fort Worth, Texas.
Great. Anissa?
Hey, I'm Lisa Hemming, Director of the Center for Green Schools, and I am a half-hour walk from Craig.
Craig is like a dot on the map by which everyone locates each other. I see. Joel?
Hi, I'm Joel from Rewiring America, and I'm in Tacoma Park, Maryland.
Rick?
Good afternoon, everyone. Rick Brown, born in Baltimore, lived in Philadelphia, neighbor of Ted in Petaluma, California. Go Giants.
Carolina?
Hi, all. Carolina Chacon. I'm with the Alliance for Electric School Buses based in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Awesome. Danielle?
Hey everyone, Danielle Dank, Trust for Public Land, School Years Initiative. I am based in Philadelphia.
Cool. Tanya?
Hi, I'm Tanya Mon, she, her. I'm with Climate Jobs National Resource Center, and I'm based in Oakland, California.
Great. And then Julia?
Hey everybody, I'm Julia Sebastian, she, her, with Jobs and Justice San Francisco, also based in Ohlone Land, Oakland, California.
Great. Michelle?
I think that's me. Hi all, Michelle Faggart, sorry for joining late. With This is Planet Ed, and I am located in Washington, D.C.
Great. Justin?
Hi folks, Justin Thompson with the National Education Association, usually based in New York, but today I'm in DC.
Great. And then Tim?
Hello, this is Tim Hunter with the National Association of Energy Service Company, normally based in the DC area, but in Texas today.
Great. Well, it's so awesome. My screen, like there are more boxes than can fit on a screen. So really awesome to see all these, all of you out there and the interest in this. So we're going to start with just some updates since our last meeting, and then we've got some items that came up in the last meeting that we want to follow up on, and then we're going to get into the bulk of the time we think we'll spend on the question of like supporting district leaders and sort of the last mile of implementation around the IRA today. So with that, I will kick it to, oh, I'm sorry. I meant to leave someone for last. We have a new member of our team, Sarah Heine, as Undaunted, who's joined this week as our chief of staff. And Sarah, I apologize. Could you want to say hi?
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Heine. I'm on day 3 now, and I'm in Buffalo, New York.
Great. Great. We're excited to have Sarah start collaborating with us and with all of you, and really looking forward to you being a part of this community, Sarah. So welcome. So with that, I will turn things over to Sarah Ross for what's new.
Yes, not confusing at all. All right, what's new? And you all have to help me with make sure we're all on the same page of what's new here. So I think part of what's new since we last talked is there's now guidance on what is an energy community, or at least as I understand it, 92% of the guidance we need about what is an energy community. There's still one element. There was like a multi-part test for defining energy communities. And I think part of that is still uncertain, but we do have an initial map, which we linked here that the DOE issued. And right, the reason as a refresher that this is important is if you are located in an energy community, you get an extra 10% adder when it comes to the investment tax credit. So another 10% off your ground source heat pump, another 10% off your solar, another 10% off your energy storage. So if you are working in some specific communities, like I was speaking with someone in Philly the other day, and he was talking about, up to 50% off his ground source heat pump. And I was like, well, check, because I don't think you're an energy community, and you can just get more specific than that. So on the flip side, there are some communities that may not know they're an energy community. And so I wrote to one community saying, hey, and by the way, you've been defined as an energy community. That means this, value proposition is even going to be stronger for you. So check that out. Anyone have anything to add on, do I have it right on where we are in energy communities, like most of the way there, but some T's to cross, I's to dot, nodding heads, thumbs up would be awesome. Okay, we think that's where we are. Cool. The other thing that's new is the EPA issued a framework document for something we haven't gone deep on yet, which is the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, but yet another funding opportunity that I would say is still on the horizon, but potentially another funding opportunity for schools. They've been kind of mentioning schools in a lot of their sample documentation around what this fund could be used for. This latest framework, they are asking for comments on it by May 12th. They just issued a new little fact sheet, which defines, refines the buckets that will be part of this $27 billion opportunity. So you can check out that fact sheet. It's actually a fact sheet that they wrote to share with communities. So feel free to help distribute that. And we at Undaunted are unclear whether we will have the capacity to mobilize by May 12th to write a comment in on this. If we do have time to really ingest this latest framework and come up with some cogent comments about how the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund could be shaped in ways that would be even more beneficial for schools, I think we would put the question out there, are there other folks that would be interested in collaborating on that and or signing on? If so, you can drop us a line. Anything anyone wants to add or a question on Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund? Harley, is your raised hand that you want to talk or that you want to collaborate on a letter around the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund?
DG is very slow moving when it comes to signing on to things. So we have to get all 14 partners to sign on. But just to add to what you said, so of the $27 billion bucket, 7 set aside for solar, residential, and community, but of the other 20 billion left over, they identified priority areas and building decarbonization being one of them. So
that's a great add. That's a great add. And then they split that 20 billion into a national clean investment fund and a clean communities investment accelerator. And I haven't totally figured out how these two pieces might play together, how schools might participate in both of those. That's the like thinking work that I just haven't gotten around to yet. Is it clear to anyone else that maybe has gone deep on, is anyone spending time on the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, or and is someone ahead of me on this call in terms of understanding those two pieces?
CJNRC is, and schools actually is in both pots of those, or is theoretically in both pots of those. Like they can't apply directly in either one,
Right.
but they're eligible to apply for whoever does get it. But yeah, we are spending a fair amount of time on that.
Okay, cool. Great. Next up, I think we still, has anyone else heard news on guidance from Treasury on direct pay, the kind of basis questions, or other kind of provisions in there? Have we seen any more guidance? I think we're still waiting on those two pieces. Yeah. Okay. And then the last bit of what's new, I'm going to turn over to Carolina to talk about a quick sec on the latest EPA Clean School Bus program, and with a fact sheet that we linked in here. So Carolina, over to you.
Thank you. And I don't want to take up too much of everyone's time, but I wanted to share that this new funding opportunity has opened up. It's $400 million for this year. It's a very competitive grants application, so different than the rebates that you all might have heard about last year. The fact sheet goes into a little bit more about who's eligible, who's prioritized, and what the funding can cover. There's a lot more. It's a complicated process, and I added into the agenda a couple other documents and guidance that we've created from the Alliance for School Districts. To be very clear, I don't think it's the right funding opportunity for everyone because it's so complex. And so there's also a comparison chart there between what the rebates look like, what the grants look like. We're working on decision trees and other resources so that school districts can kind of decide, should we apply now or should I wait, as well as technical assistance and other resources that they can rely on if they do decide that they want to apply. The applications are due August 22nd, so it's a 120-day window, but it's moving very quickly. And unfortunately, of course, during a time when a lot of school districts are out of session, folks are on vacation, the timeline is not ideal. The EPA is hosting a webinar on this topic next week. On Wednesday, May 10th, I can send around the link if folks are interested in joining. It'll be an information session, but this grants program, because it is so detailed, I'm sure they're going to take up the full hour and won't have a ton of time for questions. But if you do have any questions on program guidelines, if you think that there are school districts in your networks that would be interested in applying and would like resources, let me know. We're happy to help. And we're also coordinating on this with WRI, with Catherine and others on her team to make sure that we're getting resources out there to school districts that are interested in this opportunity. But happy for folks to come to us for any questions or suggestions or other resources that you might need. And I'll add that EPA webinar in the chat in 1 second.
Great, thanks, Carolina. Any other just updates on what's new in sort of IRA/IIJA land since our last call? Okay, so the next piece, we had a couple things from the last meeting.
Jonathan, I do have, there are apparently, there is a forestry grant, urban forestry, that I actually had my eye on a while ago and then was not paying attention to, that one of our partners has been approached. It has to be a nonprofit that actually gets the funding, but they're interested in partnerships with school districts. So in case any of your school district friends happen to have forest land, which is more often than you think.
If you have a second, Karen, can you add the link to that to the someplace?
Dig that one up.
That'd be great.
One of the more obscure ones.
Okay. Last month we put out a template for like a deck for organizations to share 2 slides. One, just who are you and what do you work on generally? And then the second slide was how are you thinking about the IRA? and opportunities for schools in your network. So wanted to just appreciate all the folks that added, slides over the last few weeks to that deck. It's a great resource. If you haven't looked at it since the last meeting, encourage folks to, take a spin through it. And if you haven't, kind of taken 15 minutes to make your slides, really appreciate folks for giving that a little thought and sharing, just so we can kind of, a big part of like creating this group is just to spark connections and collaboration. And that's a kind of an early resource to support that. And then the second thing was the basis for ground source heat pumps, and could disposal be included? And I know Mary and Dwight are not here, but Sarah, we got an update on that. Can you? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna channel my inner Mary and Dwight. So the two of those folks were really good about following up when Mary raised that question last time, and recognized how powerful it would be for districts if they could include that in the basis when they're trying to make this move from, an old oil tank to a new ground source heat pump, and just the remediation costs around removing that equipment. So she and Dwight have reached out to a bunch of folks. In particular, Mary said she reached out to IWBI and the Vogel Group. They have attorneys with regulatory and kind of treasury experience, and they are exploring, what opportunities there might still be to have an impact around the regulations on this. But the initial feedback that Dwight got from people who are familiar with how this tax credit has been deployed in the past is that, that kind of demolition, remediation, get rid of the old stuff costs would unlikely to be included in the basis, unfortunately. So it would likely be a lift or need to have some pushing, but it seems like Mary was gonna give it a go. So that's the quick update on that. I'll try to answer any questions if there are any, but I think if folks are interested in, learning more about that, or I think Mary Filardo is really leading on that piece right now.
So this is Tim Unruh.
Yeah, hi, Tim.
I had a call with a guy over at a geothermal group asking similar questions as, could you take asbestos abatement and so forth and include that in projects as well? And he also said it's unlikely that you could include that. He didn't think that anything beyond the direct equipment associated with the ground source heat pump system really would qualify. He says ductwork and all that would count, but the remediation probably would not.
Got it. All right. Unfortunate, but not unexpected, and makes sense and comports with other feedback we're getting. Jonathan, do you want me to slide right into the next piece here?
I think so. We had a couple folks join late. Amy and Noel, welcome. So I just want to make sure here's the meeting and agenda. And if you guys can add yourself to the notes, that would be great.
Awesome. So the meat of this call, we wanted to spend kind of digging more into this question of how we support the last mile of IRA implementation, specifically around these investment tax credit and the last mile of implementation there. We are in Massachusetts here, we've been watching kind of the first cohort of school districts try and incorporate these new tax incentives into their decision making. And it's been, we've seen a lot of friction. So we are, when you think about the school decision makers, these are often volunteer school building committee members, and a lot of this work is kind of way over their head. So we've been doing a bunch of customer interviews of town finance directors, of school board members, of town sustainability directors, really trying to understand what they know about this tax credit, what experiences they're having, and what kind of friction, they're expecting. We're doing that with a group called the Building Electrification Accelerator, which is actually a spin out of RMI. So this is a group that works and has interest in supporting municipalities electrify their existing buildings and certainly new buildings. And so they've been a really excited and capable partner for us in doing a lot of these customer interviews. So I'm just going to do a quick share screen here. We linked in the agenda for today some of the questions that we had been hearing. And so if you had a chance to take a peek at those, that's the result of some of our first customer interviews. And that is really, the first level here for us is really to identify what questions those local decision makers have that they're going to need to answer to overcome or to help, others in their city and town overcome to move forward. Some of them might be questions, some of them are more readily described as kind of areas of friction. From there, I think the next thing we've started to think about is really an innovation process of like, either what are the solutions that we need to innovate to overcome those areas of friction? What are the answers? And then the last piece really being, well, it's one thing for us to sit in a venue like this and have the answer to the extent there is one, but really it's about thinking about what are the strategies for putting the answers of solutions into the hands of those who need it, when they need it, right? In ways that they can really hear it and use it. And how do we do that all like with some ease in this process? So thinking more about delivery, we've been starting to bucket some of these questions and try and think about, are the answers or solutions to some of these questions the same across the country? Are they the same at least across a state context, or are they really project specific, right? Because that's going to kind of affect how we smooth out these areas of friction. As an example of an answer or solution that's the same across the country, the process that all districts will go through with the IRS to receive payment and that timeline, that should be the same across the country. There's no reason why the answer in Philly is going to be different than the answer in San Antonio. What answers apply to my project is a very project specific kind of a question or area of friction that we need to devise tools to work out, right? Next, one thing that we've learned from these customer interviews is that the answers or solutions in some cases need to be delivered by a certain specific set of actors to be heard or effective. So the question of like how these federal funds might interact with my existing broader state funding for school facilities, I can give whatever answer I want, but really districts need to hear from our school building authority to trust that. So certain actors need to say certain things for it to be heard. At the other end of the spectrum, have any districts in my state successfully access these incentives? My grandmother could send out a case study which details that, and it kind of stands on its own, right? So different in who delivers the message here. And then lastly, what tools do we have in our toolkit for addressing these areas of friction or these questions? Some tools might be a national webinar for those questions that are the same across the whole country. Some solutions are going to take the form of really project specific TA, where we have project specific questions that need to be answered. And then finally, there may be some questions, we talked last time about the kind of bridge financing challenges that actually the strategies are going to be new products that we have to develop. And so we are doing some talking with state green banks and state school construction authorities around developing bridge financing solutions for these tax credits to help get municipalities from the initial cost to receiving those funds back from the federal government. So just to think more about that last mile and how we're kind of thinking strategically about these questions. So to talk with that as kind of the setup here, there's a bunch of friction points that we're seeing at that last mile. We've got to think strategically about how to answer them. We're going to turn it over to Anissa, who's thinking about using one of these tools, a national webinar series to really answer a bunch of the questions that can be effectively be answered by that kind of a strategy. Questions or thoughts before I turn it over to Anissa? Did people have a chance to take a look at that list of questions? If you have more to add on, I gave everyone comment rights, so please would love to have your thoughts as we build out, kind of that list of what we see people struggling with. I think it's good and instructive.
A quick question. Have you guys talked to the financial advisor community in California on these kinds of issues? The vast bulk of schools rely on their FAs to guide them and advise them, and frankly, help them navigate these kinds of issues. And so I think it's great to have sort of a, maybe some high level stuff, but when it comes down to actually structuring the financing for these kind of projects, I don't
Totally.
think anybody other than an FA is who a school is going to rely on, because it's
Yeah.
even academic. No offense to anybody here who's academic. If you haven't been in the market doing the work, you know, it's just too generic. You have, you know, these markets are changing all the time, and the IRA money is only going to be one piece of the stack. So I just think the FA is where you want to get the, you know, the best information. Maybe get them to be involved in providing some, you know, guidance.
Totally. Yeah. And I think building the capacity of that crew of folks around this opportunity so that they understand what their district customers are experiencing and can give smart guidance in a timely way. I think that's a really important strategy. I totally agree with that. Other thoughts or questions? Okay, then I think we will turn it over to Anissa to talk about some of how she's executing on smoothing out this last mile of implementation.
Attempting. Okay, hi. Thanks, Sarah. So I've talked to a couple of people on this call, and I'm so excited to kind of have this floor to gather some thoughts and input and ideas from you. We have for those that don't know much about the Center for Green Schools, we have a network of sustainability directors and environmental health and indoor air quality people that we coordinate, who work at the school system level. It's a couple hundred people at the sort of mostly medium to large size districts. And we have a lot of trust among that network. And they have relationships, obviously, with the people at their districts who are the business officials, financial advisors, that sort of thing. So our hope is that if we put out education that's sort of geared toward the sustainability professional that can also speak to their partners at the districts, that we can actually get those folks to invite like a team from their districts to learn together when it comes to how to implement green building projects. So we're really focused on the building side of things with this. I'm going to share an outline that has like learning objectives and such, and just walk you through sort of what we're thinking. Let's see. Oh, disabled participant screen sharing. Can you? Is that me? Is that you?
I think you're a co-host now, Anissa. Sorry about that.
No worries at all. Still not letting me share.
Try now.
Okay. There we go.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. So you should be seeing a Word doc with the Center for Green Schools logo at the top. Okay. The objective of these webcasts are to really try to make these projects that could happen with the funding available very real, very tangible for school districts, and actually get them to think about like how they are going to move to the next step when it comes to how to get this stuff done. So we want to give them enough technical information that they feel equipped to ask the right questions, to hire whatever consultants they want to hire, to fill out applications themselves, that sort of thing. So we want to get into that level of information, which is pretty like one level deeper than you can get usually on a webcast. So I've laid out 5, so just bear with me. But the format will be to take actual scenarios at a school and walk through the kinds of funding that might be available for those scenarios. So very sort of tangible, hands-on. Session 1, what I'm dreaming up here is fundamentals. Blue Green Alliance, Harley created this awesome guide that lays out a lot of the terminology at the front of the guide. So we'd want to like make sure everybody's on the same page with terminology, terminology around labor standards, provisions, and sort of outline sort of all the pieces and parts that we're going to have to dive into in the series. And then also lay out the three or four building upgrade construction scenarios that are going to be used throughout the series. So we'll stick with the same types of projects, and then if someone's only interested in new construction, they could fast forward the recording or whatever to new construction if they want, but like, you know, it gives people some way of understanding what's coming in these sessions. So I'm really interested in this group's thoughts on what those scenarios should be. Also very interested in speaker ideas that you have. Harley has kindly agreed to join me on the first one. We have this great partner that does 179D work with public entities that has also agreed to be on here. I'm searching around Environmental Defense Fund for the right person right now, but they have this great IRA tracker that if you haven't come across, you should look up. So, you know, there's clearly tracking a lot of stuff that's going on, and I would love to have them on to sort of talk about how to stay up to date on opportunities. So that's sort of the fundamentals. And then the next two, let me collapse this. The next two are on tax incentives. One would be for public school districts, and one would be for independent schools and educational nonprofits like charter management organizations. Since those two, they're two different, pretty different approaches to how they're going to have to manage the tax incentives. So same presenters probably on both of these, but addressing those four scenarios when it comes to tax incentives. And then we would do one on more the grant side. Would love your ideas on speakers of this, because I don't know. Like, should we have agency people? I feel like that would get too high level. We need somebody who can get like a little more in the weeds. And then session 5, I'm leaving open, and at the end of all the other sessions, I will be asking the participants to outline questions and sort of gaps that still exist for them even after the content that they just listened to. So I'll be collecting that through the first 4 sessions, and then basically design a 5th session to kind of touch as many of those topics as possible for that last kind of like user designed, attendee designed session to respond to what the attendees really need. So this is the outline. You can tell it's still very much an outline form, but I've had conversations with Harley about this, with ASBO and the Superintendents Association. So they're on board with this too, and would love to join with other partners to present this, and would also love your ideas on those scenarios, on speakers, and on just the general content.
I have two. Oh.
Brian and Craig.
Two quick questions, Anissa. Well, thank you. Looks terrific. Assuming I know the answers to these two. One is what's the timing you're thinking of for rolling them out, and also are they open to folks who are not in your network and who have similar related roles but aren't sustainability, coordinators, directors, et cetera?
Yeah, they'll be open and free to whoever wants to join. And I'd like to do the first one in like late June, mid to late June, and then hit like an every 3-week cadence. I'm just like to do these well. We did a series in COVID that was Mythbusters and IAQ that was like very timely, relevant, had hundreds of people sign in, but it took so much coordination, and I'm to make it relevant and useful. And I'm anticipating that a bunch of tax advisor speakers that I'm recruiting need a little coaching to talk to school people. So we're gonna have to do a lot of in between like coordination time, but I think we'll be able to hit like an every 3 week kind of cadence with these.
Hey, Anissa, do you want feedback now from this group about kind of how to think? Is that what you were?
I think we have some time for some feedback now. Yeah.
I will just say, as somebody who's written some of the grants, it's really helpful to get that, like, sort of, here is what is written and here is what we are really looking for from a particular agency. You know, there's so at the conference where I met you, so, I don't know, the one in the fall, the woman from Energy kind of said something really clearly about looking to leverage private capital that is in the grant application, but she really underscored it. And then I just similarly had somebody say something about this round of EPA buses, not about private capital. Now I can't remember what they were saying, but that the little tidbits of like, the grant says this and we really mean this thing or that thing is super helpful. Which would
Right.
be an argument in favor of having the agency people, but I understand why you may not want to like stack them all up in a meeting, etc.
Yeah. Sort of what are they actually looking for? Like what's behind the words that are on the page? Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's a good pointer. Craig, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, Anissa, I think it does. I think it does look really good. My first thought actually was Brian's question, so that's great. That'll be free and open. I think the other one, and Karen just kind of alluded to this. How do we? And this was my experience with the first DOE Schools Focus grant. Was the grant money really? Well, it could be used to start programs that wouldn't exist by itself, or it could be leveraged to do more with private capital or your existing bonds. And so I think that should be a focus, because I don't hear us talking about that a lot, is what should your school do and how can that be catalyzed by the federal, by the federal funds?
Yeah.
Versus subsector schools where they may not have anything planned or have the money to do anything. So this could do, enable them to do something. So those two categories and break it down. The other, and speaking of categories, the other one that at least I get very confused on, and I'm assuming others at the district level might, is, reading that just now is right. It's based on the fund type, EPA, DOE, tax incentives, et cetera. And I'm wondering from the other way, if the ground up was like, what are the different project types? Resilience hubs, electric buses seem to be like a very clear project type, but the rest, ground source heat pumps, HVAC, lighting, resilience, like what are the project categories, and where could the funding across different streams go to that type of category? Would be a helpful way for me and the schools I talk to on how to approach things, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons. I mean, it's the reason I had each session sort of organized around some scenarios like that. But I hear you saying that like actually the scenarios are sort of primary for the school audience, because that's how they're approaching the projects. Yeah,
the people that work with, at least the people I work with that work with school districts, are designers, engineers, consultants, and financial advisors, and they all are around a particular thing.
Right.
Not a financial rebate, it's around a modernization project or a new school or a system replacement. And so the question is, if a school has a dire need for a new roof, how can we get that new done? And so I think going from that way would be interesting. Maybe helpful for me, helpful to some, maybe helpful for others.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, Craig, your question, are you talking more on like the technologies piece? So like if it was clarified, like if you need to upgrade your HVAC, here are all the relevant funding streams. If you need to do building envelope. Okay, because me being at the federal level and our state staff are asking me the exact same questions. Like, just tell us by technology. So I think there's definitely a hunger for that.
It makes me want to blow this up and do like a series based on the type of projects. So like, people could sign in to learn about what to do if you're doing new construction or a heat pump replacement or, you know, like something else. That feels for the audience that we serve, that feels more useful.
Yeah, and I'll have one more comment and then one more question, and then I see Tim has his hand up. But so their comment on that too. And like I've had this discussion at the federal level, some of the DOE and EPA folks too, is how do we make this easier? So even though the categories around resilience to me is a big topic where it means different things to different people. But if we could, you know, if we had a whiteboard, we could start drawing arrows to every federal grant to different topic areas. And what would be included in resilience? Because then we're talking about the community hubs and different grants outside of that. But if you have a school that is resilience hub, then all of these funding streams can go to that. And so I think just connecting all these things to a project and then, you know, essentially what would be in an RFP would be really helpful. The other question, this is a large one. I don't really expect an answer, but the last one here says federal grants locating, applying for funding. And at least with the only schools focused grant so far that had $80 million and received $5.5 billion worth of requests, do we need more schools applying for this money? It seems like we have too many schools applying for this money. And so I don't know, there's something there that we either have to, you know, I don't know what it is, but I just want to flag, there's too many people applying for the same money already. And so if we're thoughtfully educating more people how to apply, that's going to exaggerate the problem. And that's just a statement. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a concern with the agency too. It's why they haven't put anywhere publicly that they had that many applicants, because they're worried what it'll say to schools for applying in the future.
Yeah.
I think there are, the thing I'd like to highlight in talking about grants is that there are a bunch of grants that will likely come through states for environmental justice stuff and for, you know, climate resilience and that kind of thing. And I don't think it's on a lot of the school districts' radar that they are eligible for that money. We don't know a lot about it yet because it's got to like trickle its way down in some cases. But I think that's something that we need to be highlighting for schools, that it's not just the grant programs that say this is for schools. It's also the grant programs that say this is for local communities and schools are eligible, right?
And I think that's going to be the hardest one to navigate.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Tim, and then Jenny, I saw your hand.
So I wanted to mirror what we just heard, is that I think school districts do often have a thing that they want to get done, and they focus around that thing, and helping them understand that here's that thing, but here's how you expand it. And then, of course, I have to throw in the idea of leveraging private capital. So I think that's an important piece. And then I think the financial aspect is important as well. You talked about earlier about the financing piece of trying to bridge the gap. I've got one of my members who's effectively created a product that helps a school district or city bridge the gap between knowing you have the IRA funding and getting the IRA funding.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be a good topic as well to help them understand that piece, that there is a need. I don't think you go into detail, but you need to talk about, you know, how does the details of this really work in a time scale?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's good. Jenny, did you take your hand down?
I did. I think Tim hit my comments pretty well. You know, school districts, mid-size and lower, smaller districts, their priorities set already. They have, you know, if they have a master plan, you know, it may have been created 10 years ago and they're still trying to get things done. So I think that reality is out there, and you know, it's very difficult to get them to move away from that initial plan. But I love what Tim said about, okay, if this is your priority, how can we pop it out? How can we do something else with it?
Yeah, good. Sarah.
Yeah, I think the other benefit, I would second the like moving to this is the project we want to get done perspective. And the other benefit to that might be, right, if a community has a new construction project on the horizon and you have a new construction kind of, you know, event, they may be able to pull in, you know, a school board member who's on that building committee and pull in other folks who are, you know, the specific set of decision makers that are going to be involved in new construction versus the like facilities people who are going to be, you know, doing some system replacement or other things where they wouldn't necessarily, you know, it's a different set of people. So it would allow you to kind of people to pull in the right audience members.
That's a great point. Yeah. Yeah. If we want it to be something where people can bring a team of people who are actually going to be working on something, then it needs to be defined by the thing they're working on. Yeah.
Right. And then the other kind of question for you to think about is, you know, as we think about these kind of stacks that will emerge for these projects in a specific locality, I know the focus here is, you know, you're a national organization, you're going to be focusing on these new federal opportunities, but how do we illuminate maybe the ways in which certain types of state or local utility funds play into this? You know, where is stacking possible, just as like an EG, right? Because it's going to be different state to state, but I think there's an opportunity once you move to projects to kind of illuminate how a project funding stack kind of comes together.
I'd love ideas from this group if you know some folks that can talk intelligently about that stacking. I know that you've been doing it for some schools in Massachusetts, Sarah, so maybe you could, you know, help us organize that content. And I'm just like, I know who knows all about tax incentives, but I don't know who knows about putting all the things together. So I think that's going to be a challenge in sort of figuring out the right experts to have on the line to answer questions. Jenny, and then Jonathan, did you get?
I just think this direction, Anissa, I'm like kind of just +1, like that it's projects. And I think I was in a similar vein to what Sarah said. I really think that if we can find some district leaders or folks working on finance with districts to show slides of for the different projects, here's how we financed it. And particularly some of like we need to all be kind of thinking about the early examples of districts that are building the ITCs into their models now. Because my understanding, we don't have the guidance yet, but my understanding is that the reimbursement may actually be available even retroactively for projects that are done, you know, this year. And so I think that's gonna be the gold, is like when people see the model of like first cost and ongoing costs of like how the ITCs work and the you know, unlimited nature of them, those are the slides that I think the district people will really dig into.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I was gonna just say, Anissa, that I know DLR has a whole master planning group. So there may be some folks with some expertise in how districts are playing out their master plans. And I know in some regions, they are getting that help from regional superintendents' offices and that sort of thing. So I think there might be some people in those spaces that can speak the language of educators because they're doing all of that work.
Yeah, great. I'm seeing some links just get shared in the chat. Can we make sure those are in the agenda so that I can refer to them later? Thanks. Craig, what do you got?
Oh, I just what Jenny said I thought was spot on, because I think to me this is we're starting to connect like all the dots here. Is, you know, if you have a master plan that's done well, so you can start to prioritize, you know, replacements, modernizations, and improvements, and you do that in the right way. We have to define what that right way is, and we're assuming DLR knows the right way. They'll tell you they do. I'm not sure they do, but I'm not sure they don't. But if we can have an industry organized way to do that, then the next question is, how do you get money to do that stuff, including the federal incentives? And if you're doing that around particular projects, Nisa, this is what I was hoping to talk to you next week about, right? Is then how do we get specific criteria for those projects so that you know you're doing it to the best practices, right? New construction, we have, you know, lead, chips, and well, and so we could start to organize that. But how do we start defining that around, you know, individual project improvements so that the money is going towards a best practice individual project? And so I think that this, you know, this process is starting to really come together for all of our work of, you know, how do you plan for it? How do you fund it? And once you do it, how do you do it best practices? And the next step, of course, as well, once you do that, how do you get the right product and the right procurement to make that part really easy. But I think this is like an essential start here, which is, you know, connecting all the work we do, and that's really exciting.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. Other musings and pointers and ideas?
I just had a comment that was more on the process side that I think I put in the chat, which is just that many questions are going to be raised and not answered in the space. And what do you want to do with that? And what's the asynchronous community network support mechanism to keep you know, offering guidance, support, answers, etc. So
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that's something that we should talk about as a group here, maybe on a future call, because you know, we'll collect as much as we can to address, you know, live in that 5th session that I outlined, but like there's going to be lots of stuff that comes out after a single webcast series that like we aren't going to be able to address, and it's going to be new, you know, as this is all going to be changing pretty rapidly. So, you know, how do we want to be useful to local leaders and school districts as a group? And, you know, how do we make sure that we stay on it so that they can have the resources they need?
Awesome. Thanks, Anissa. I hope that was helpful. It was really great to see what you guys are thinking. So just to wrap up this part, you know, it would be great if, as folks are out there traveling in the world, you know, we're keeping our eye on kind of this last mile of implementation and the frictions that we're seeing pop up here. You know, certainly these webinars will be a great tool, and we'll have to develop other tools just by virtue of the types of friction and types of questions that are going to emerge. And I think one of those tools that we haven't talked about here as we went to the last mile was like, how can states be part of the solution for overcoming some of these areas of friction, for building some of the awareness, for answering some of the questions with authority that only kind of state actors can answer for local districts that look to them. And so in a future session, we could talk about kind of the role of states in smoothing this last mile of ITC and more generally IRA implementation. We've had some preliminary conversations with state school building authority leaders, and the quick tidbit from that is they don't know anything about the investment tax credit, and their eyes got really big when I talked to them about, you know, how many federal dollars they could be pulling down from DC to help replace aging HVAC systems in their state. So they would politely always give some version of the question that was like, and who are you again? And like, why isn't like some more official person coming to tell me this if it's such a big deal? So there's a lot of work to do to kind of bring our states in. So maybe that closed out this session. And then Jonathan, do we want to kind of like take the last few minutes here to look ahead maybe?
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. And Anissa, I just wanted to appreciate you for kind of stepping up and saying, I will lead a series of 5 webinars, you know, on behalf of this, you know, like this issue and, you know, and all of us. And so, you know, if
how scared I am about it.
Yeah, so we're proposing a next call, you know, about a month from now on June 7th, again on a Wednesday afternoon. And so that means that by then we might be a week or 2 away from your kickoff, you know, webinar. So I think that, you know, to the extent that you're up to kind of share the next iteration on, you know, this plan with this, you know, group, and, you know, I think folks are, you know, I'm seeing chats and nods like we will try to help promote this, you know, within our networks and communities, and, you know, continue to reach out to us if we can help populate the webinars with speakers and content. And so I think next time we might kind of come back to this a little bit. I think, you know, Sarah just previewed the state conversation, and then at some point we will have some updated guidance from Treasury on the ITCs that when we do, we'll want to kind of really work through those together. And then I think there's just also like an invitation to others, you know, on the call or, you know, in this network, if there are, you know, projects or things that you want to try to workshop like we did, Anissa's webinar series today, please like be in touch and we'll try to, find time for this community to keep building on each other's ideas. And be in touch if you have other things, feedback for us on how to keep building and growing and making this a productive space. And Craig has a question.
It just, Jonathan, following up on the
go
email, there's been a few of us on calls with the Basic Coalition on the ESSER funds and some email chains. I generally don't know. I mean, we've been focused so much on the IRA and distributing that. I don't know much about the details of the ESSER funds, but they are expiring into this year and next year. I just want to make sure that collectively we're all good at the school are using those funds. If they're not, or if there's an issue, given the time, do we need a similar initiative there? So that's just my question, because I keep hearing that, keep hearing about it.
Great. Okay. Well, we will keep looking for answers to these questions. And in the meantime, be in touch. We'll see you in a month. And thank you everyone for being here today. Great.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.